Good afternoon and welcome to After Hours, and welcome to the Ag Hall on Mayne Island where a concert was just performed, and joining me is Veda Hille.
To make do again, I've gone and hit the ceiling again. Nobody's checking in, nobody's wondering what's going on, and what they got all wrong. Nobody sees I'm having the time of my life here. As the storms on, life here, riding my way right out of songs. Exhaust this part of myself, I could do something else. I could see something else.
I sort of learned politics, and you were along the way all through the time I started in alternative media. So today I was kind of wondering, where are we going to begin? I don't know much personally about you, so I want to start at the beginning. Where did your love of music come from?
My parents were great music lovers, and my dad's a musician, a folk musician in his own right, and always had bands when I was a little kid. And I remember very clearly in kindergarten that a group of other children came and played violin for us, and I remember this moment really clearly, of just a moment of epiphany and just joy in music, which sounds pretentious for a 5-year-old, but the fact that I remember it at all, I think, says something. And I went home that day and I said to my mom, I would like to learn to play violin. And she said, well, we have a piano. How about you learn to play piano? I said, yes. And then she didn't, she was busy with the other kids. It was a year before I got lessons, and apparently I just asked so consistently that was part of why she really made it happen. And I just immediately was so interested in music.
Violin is an odd instrument. I had a cousin who, for some reason, her parents wanted her to play violin, and she just didn't. So a violin is an interesting instrument to first.
I think it was because of this first experience of hearing all these children. It must have been a Suzuki concert or something, like where I remember there was 20 kids all playing violin at the same time, which could be really terrible. So the fact that I liked it, they must have been good players. And I think maybe it was also that I was seeing other children play an instrument. I was just like, oh, kids can play instruments. I'd like to play, and I thought it was violin, but piano I think has served me really well, and I don't remember not playing piano. So it's such an integral part of my physical life.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Vancouver and then Langley and Aldergrove. So we moved around quite a bit in my early years, and then we came back to Vancouver when I started high school, which was a good time to be in the city, I think. And around 16, I stopped taking classical lessons and started playing pop music in the lunchroom, singing songs with my friends, and that felt really good. But until I started writing in my early 20s, I never really thought it was going to be my thing.
Back in the old days, you mentioned at the concert Joni Mitchell. Talk a bit about that. Who were your influences? Well,
Joni's not. I'm sort of late to the Joni train. She wasn't. I was more. I was more Tapestry at that point. Those albums were made at the same time in the same studio. Like they were making those records down the hall from each other, which is Blue and Tapestry. But yeah, I loved Tapestry, but I also really loved the Talking Heads. Was a huge early, I think that was the album that I first loved that my family didn't like, was Remain in Light.
There you go.
I feel like that's always a crucial moment in your teen life, is when you pick a record and your family thinks it's nuts. Now they all like Talking Heads now. My mom would be very sad to hear that. Yeah, I don't want her denigrated because they've expanded too. But and then leading from the Heads into Bowie and Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark and XTC and all that new wave art rock stuff. But then the other big thing right when I was 16 was the Vancouver Folk Music Festival. So we started going in there, pretending we were still 12 years old and sneaking in. And that festival just opened my eyes to all kinds of music. There was so much there, and then it was so immediate, like the show that we just had here on Mayne, where you can see your audience. They're the real people who are right there, and it's a very unpretentious exchange of art and ears.
And that's sharing. It's like in the past, families, my grandparents, they'd play music when there was family gatherings and stuff. It's sort of like the past.
Well, music it's because I also went to art school. Like before I started writing music, I went to Emily Carr for a little while, and like I thought of lots of different ways that I could make things in the world. But music, in the end, is something you can do without any money and without any tech if you need to, and it's so immediate, and it's an art form that is so connective. And I think all the art forms are connective, but music might be the most universal because it permeates everything. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to make things that I could make if I never had any money, which is sort of, you know, I've always had just enough money, but not very much. But I've been able to keep going because music is an art form that you can just make with your hands if you have to.
And it's very penetrating, I find. Even if you don't understand exactly the words, like what your story is that you're telling. There was a song I was listening to, I was watching it, your performance was taped, and I think it was Wild Things. I've got it marked down. But
that song is called Bedlam, yeah.
And I wrote down the lyrics because I wasn't sure of the name. And it just made me cry. Not in a bad way, but it just penetrated me.
Thank you. I think that is seems to be one of my secret powers, is that there's a lot of tears at a lot of my shows, and I mean, I love that. I love that. I was saying before, when the cameras were rolling, that I did a lot of online shows in the last year, and I got a lot of emails from people, and I could see them on the screen because we were doing Zoom shows. A lot of really easy weeping, which I actually don't take credit for at all. I think that was just the ability to have a live show in this time of isolation, even though it was through the wires of the internet, was, again, a great connector of people in a really deep way.
Okay, let's do it, right? Okay, we're starting with a request for Ivan. It's a song called Liza Jane. I'll go up to that mountaintop and plant me a patch of cane. Make me a jug of molasses for to sweeten little Liza Jane. Oh, poor Liza. This spring is the one that other springs were trying for, other seasons aim to be. Perfect light and perfect trees, the birds are brighter. The blossoms have achieved their peak, explosions in electric leaves, ridiculous abundance. The air attacks my lungs, the warm pale yellow sun. It knocks me down, it slays me. So many perfect, lively things this spring is the one. I see it because you are gone.
close friend of mine had a very, very, very close friend die, and that song kind of in the moment. Talk about that song.
Well, that's a song of grief. I don't usually talk too much about the specificity of it, also because, but someone very close to me died unexpectedly. And so it's about being in that state of ecstatic grief. Like, because I find that early grief, it's like the world is brighter, and you're so aware of your own mortality and their goneness, and the world is so beautiful in its aliveness at the same time. And I feel like people talk about the weight of grief, but there is definitely the stage of grief where I feel like it's you're closer to everything, and it's overwhelming, but it's also very beautiful.
When I think of you in the past, leading up to now, I very much think politics. That politics followed you, that you were very aware of community. Talk a bit about that, because I saw a film, I was at a friend's, I caught bits of it, and it was The Last Waltz with and it made me think of all the politics that talk about politics a bit.
Well, I'm not very overt in my politics, although of course because I came up in the folk scene, music and politics have always been hand in hand for me, and my personal is the personal is the political. And then, of course, I've lent music to all kinds of causes, but I just really feel it's so hard right now, because it just feels like you can't. I've done tons of benefits. Yeah, I love music as a uniter and as like a bonus when you're doing all that. Like, I think political and activist work is so important and so hard, and so I just like to try to bring a little bit of joy to those spaces, because people are working so hard. And I never feel like I do enough, but I think that's also the times, like, it just feels impossible to do enough, but of course we just have to keep trying, because it's so important, and the world is in balance. It's so hard.
It's kind of hard when you see the same things coming up.
I know, and I think that capitalism has tried to sell us the line that we don't have power, and it's not, and there's nothing we can do, so we may as well just buy our things and enjoy them. And I don't think that's true. And I think that there's lots that we can do, but it's very hard to unite. I think the internet has actually divided us in many ways, or maybe we're just on the route to actually being able to maybe have a human consensus, but there's so many people. One of the things that's interesting about the pandemic is that we've become more local again, and I feel like that could be really good if we actually are forced to become more regional because we can't travel as much. Like, we've been doing shows in our backyard at home, and shows with people walking by, and because
people are shopping locally.
Yeah,
even
one hopes. Yeah, I think there could be some really good things that come out of this, as with the social movements that have strengthened during the pandemic, with Me Too and Black Lives Matter and Fairy Creek, and I think people have had a chance to reflect, and I do hope that we can come together on a few more things. Would be great.
So I don't know what this song was called. Wild Feelings?
Oh, that's Bedlam. Yeah, that one's called Bedlam.
And of course,
I feel like that's my most political song.
Well, if you do nothing, it means nothing.
Yeah,
because nothing. Talk a bit.
Yeah, so that was just, that started again as more of a personal song where, like, you know, you just get those moments where you just feel so strongly, and you're full of ambition for great things. And then those moments can pass, and then you can just go back to normal, which is, you know, the practical day-to-day life can be very absorbing and important too. But I feel like when you have those big moments, try to make some kind of action happen, whether that is for making a change for your personal life or doing something out in the world. And so it started as just like, probably for me, the big feelings were about writing songs, because those are my biggest feelings generally. But then I just thought about it in terms of action, like just encouraging people to act when they have those massive moments in their lives and do something with it.
Did you do a record? I think you said you did of the nature.
Yeah, the record called Field Study came out in 2001, and it's about science and nature and the north of Canada. Because I was very lucky to go on a trip organized by the Yukon Arts Center in 1999. Where they took a bunch of artists all over the north, and we went up to Tuktoyaktuk, and we were up at the Arctic Circle, and we went heli hiking in the Tombstone Mountains, and we rafted down the Alsek and camped on the glacial moraine.
That
it was so incredible.
Wonderful.
It was so incredible. It was one of the, and I would have been like 30, and of course at the time you're like, this is great, I'm going to do this forever, and of course there's never been another offer like that. It was a wonderful moment where the Yukon Arts Center just had this grand ambition and got the funding and took us all on this trip, and then everyone was given a commission to make work that was inspired by the trip. So that ran the gamut. Like one of the.
Did you perform along the way too? Or
no, it was just about being present and absorbing the north, and then also, of course, because you bond so well with the other people on the trip, it became about community too, or maybe that's just what I always make things into. So Jillian Kiley made a grand theater piece, and Christopher House made a beautiful dance piece. John Mann made an album. Kim Barlow made an album. And I made an album that had an accompanying video called Field Study, where I would perform the album start to finish, solo piano, and then Sean Chappelle made a beautiful video of northern images that ran behind me as I did that. And
I liked your birds song very much. I've had a lot of birds in my life the last couple of years, and recently we talked to a woman who does pencil drawings of birds, and birds are. Talk a bit about birds and why.
I just love birds. I just love them. They're so
You know
smart
how-
and
I know.
interesting. Yeah.
Bird brain is the wrong saying.
Yeah, because they're not that distractible. I've been feeding crows out my window throughout the pandemic. I got some hard-shelled peanuts, and I've just been, so the crows now recognize me in our neighborhood, which was part of my strategy. I was like, I want to be on the side of the crows when it all comes down. And hummingbirds I feel very connected to right now. There was a hummingbird that was hovered in front of the stage during sound check yesterday that made me feel good. But I think that they're fleeting and swift like thought, and watching them opens up a different pathway. I just feel like nature is so useful because human thought can get so regimented and so thought, right? And I'm very list oriented. I'm very driven, which is good and bad. But I'm always on checklists, and I'm really trying to get rid of some of that brain more and be just more here. I was just talking to my son about not always living in the future, because I live a lot in the what's next, and so birds help with what's happening right now.
Has having a son changed your music? Obviously changed your life. And
changed everything. Yeah. So I'm a mother to a stepdaughter who lives here on Mayne, and she's 28. But my son is sitting right there, and he's 12. And he changed everything. The biggest change for me, because when I was 40 when I had him, so it was a very late pregnancy. And I was like, well, maybe I won't even feel like writing music anymore. Like I'd made probably 20 albums at that point. And I was like, well, maybe it'll be done, and maybe I'll just be interested in something else. We'll see. But the thing that I found was that I was still interested in music, but it just wasn't that important anymore, which I think was really good for the art. Because I no longer felt like I needed to prove anything to the world. So some of this might also have just been about being a more mature artist, but also it was no longer the most important thing. And I think that gave a lot of freedom to the music, and my music lightened up, and I did some different projects that are very, very specific and sometimes ridiculous and sometimes just quick. And quickness became part of the thing too, because there was so much else I had to get done. And I think that sort of the Japanese creative process is often first thought, best thought, especially when you're doing pen and ink. in that style. And so I think I stopped overthinking any music and just got it done. And I've been very happy with what's come out of that process.
Comment, during the performance, you were just talking to your co-worker.
My co-worker.
Oh, sorry, that's all right. His name in front of me.
That's all right. It's Nicholas Kurgovich. It's
Yes.
quite a hard name, but we've just started doing these shows together. So fun.
But at some point you said the machine, the drum wasn't working
Oh, yeah.
properly or whatever.
Yeah.
You said there's nothing wrong with asking for what you want.
Yeah, I know. And then
want you
people
to talk
cheered.
about- yeah.
So great. Well, it was near the end of the set, and I needed a monitor change. We had one song left, and then I asked for, and then Nick was like, "Oh, you're being fussy," and I was like, "No, you ask for what you want."
Well,
And,
it's interesting because
yeah.
I thought sometimes it's hard to ask for what you want. And so I wanted you to talk a bit about that. You've come to a point where you can? Or
Yeah.
are you just comfortable with?
I was just, because I know that I know that I can be very relaxed and work with whatever's happening. Like that's also an important skill. Like just work with however the monitor sounds, or however the car is working on any given day, or wherever the drum machine decides to be, because it's a very funny little drum machine. But then also, if you can figure out a simple change that's going to help you out, you may as well just ask for it. And I think particularly being a woman in music in the earlier days, there's always been an issue with women not being respected in the technological elements, which I didn't experience too much of. I mean, of course, there was always a sound tech in the early days who didn't know that I knew what I needed, and that doesn't happen so much anymore. But I do still feel like it's unfortunately rare to have women knowing the technical stuff, or people assuming that they know it rather than assuming that they don't. So
It's kind of like you should be on camera, not do the techie stuff.
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why it's still rare to see a woman behind the soundboard, but it's changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about. Okay, so Nicholas
Kurgovich.
He met you, or you met him at a very young age.
Yeah, so he was
Talk a bit about
15.
him.
He was 15 and I was 30. So that's like 22 years ago. And he started coming to my shows. He was a teenager out in Coquitlam, and he would come and talk to me. And it was probably the first or second time that we met that he gave me a cassette tape of him and two of his friends playing versions of my songs, which were not easy songs, and he was playing them very well. And so
Interesting,
yeah,
right?
it was so interesting.
I mean, it's just like kind of surprising, right?
Completely surprising. And I mean, I always feel lucky when teenagers like what I do, because they're the most discerning. Music means the most to them. I mean, we all can keep loving music, but there's a moment in your teen years, hopefully for 5 years or so, where music can be the most important thing.
It influences you.
It
Jimi Hendrix
shapes you.
changed my life.
Yeah, whoever it is for you.
Yeah.
And that's the music you're going to love for the rest of your life. And so I feel lucky that Nick chose me from the library. And when he and I have been talking about that time, and for him, it was just great to discover that he loved the music of someone he could actually approach. And so I like to think that ease of, because I started just inviting him to parties at our house and backyard concerts. And then when I got married, he would have been 20, and so he was our house sitter when we went off and got married with all our friends. And so and then by then he was making his own records, and then my husband joined his band, and they toured the world for like 10 years. And yeah,
That's an amazing story.
it was amazing. But I knew very early when he sent me his first recordings of his own songs that he was in it for life and that he was really good. I actually expected him to be like worldwide, but turns out he's as idiosyncratic as I am, and has made this winding series of really interesting records. So it feels great to. We've always collaborated a little, but it feels very nice to have really come together at this point in our lives. And we also have just finished another record that'll come out later this year.
One late afternoon drew too soon to ruin. Don't wonder why I flew out of there. Don't wonder why I'm flying. Don't wonder how I drew too close without even trying. Don't even try to catch me lying, 'cause
me about the garage song.
Oh yeah, isn't that a great song?
Yes.
It's called Pure Evil. That was when his band was called Piano, and that's off the album Brigadoon. I just always, there's a lot of Nick's stuff is very reflective and kind of sprawling, but this is a very concise, tight little pop song, and so it's always stood out in his catalog for me. And I just love singing. The chorus is, because I'm pure evil.
Well, it kind of touched me in a, I liked the song once it started, but it kind of touched me because I don't believe in evil per se. Anyway, so talk
Yeah,
a bit more.
it's like, yeah, but also acknowledging that maybe I'm good, but I'm also evil. And there's a freedom in that too, because I've always taken that song, we're not perfect, and maybe it's fantastic to just say, yeah, I'm the evil one right this second.
We can hurt people sometimes. We've learned lessons that way, whatever.
Absolutely. And to sing it with a nice little jaunty beat, it's really fun. Which is also what I look for even more these days is it fun? That's good. I'll chase that. Because it used to be a bit more, is it serious? But
that's the politics.
Yeah. Yeah, but fun is important and serious too.
So in the immediate future, what plans do you have? You said a new record.
Well, so we've got this new record called Beach Practice that will come out at some point this fall. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but you can keep an eye out for that on all the internet places. I'm working on a couple of musicals because I do work in theater a lot.
I was going to ask you if you do music for other things besides performing.
Yes, I do. I write musical theater now with a number of, in a huge range of things. So, we have shows going up in different parts of the world, and some new stuff coming.
Cool.
Yeah, so that is stuff that keeps me very, very busy, which is great because that's less touring, and it's lovely working with the big machine of theater. Like there's so many moving parts. It's like being in an orchestra, really.
Talk a bit about that, because I'm trying to picture it actually. So this is live theater.
Live theater, so musicals, but also what they call devised theater, which is a bit more experimental. And so a musical is a certain form where the emotional moments of the drama are portrayed in song. Right. So there's one musical that I wrote with Emil Gladstone. It's an adaptation of a classic Russian opera called Eugene Onegin. Okay. So that musical is called Onegin, and we've got some new productions of that going up later this year. And so Ami and I are working on a new musical. So these are things that are, like, they're still a little odd because of who we are, but they are modeled on the Broadway form.
Okay.
So that's one kind of theater piece, and then other pieces are more like I'm working on an adaptation of Brave New World with Marcus Youssef. So that's more
interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting because there's so much of that is so contemporary, right?
So now.
Like, yeah.
Ahead of its time.
Exactly. And I love the sort of futurist music of Planet of the Apes. Remember those soundtracks? Yeah. And early Star Trek, and it's very new music-y music. So I'm trying to take some of that so it's sort of retro futurism. Anyway, playing around with that, which is really fun and different.
I was in Scotland last year at an artist residency called Cove Park, just outside of Glasgow. The artists stay by themselves in little solo huts with grass on the roof. I wanted to get my piano playing back up to snuff and to recover.
I can walk back home and then enjoy my chemicals again.
Well, and I have a show called Little Volcano, which is a solo piano show but it is a theater show with a set and lights and props, where I talk about my life and play songs from my life and play a little bit of Bach as well. So that show, that was what was supposed to be happening during the pandemic. That's really my only...
Are you going to travel around taking that show maybe here?
Well, I'd play it here. It sort of needs a theater. Do you have a theater on the island?
Well,
yeah, it sort of needs lights and things, although you never know.
Well, there's lights and stuff. Yeah.
Well, my technical director is Andrew Pye, who just moved here. So we talked to Andrew. And maybe we can do Little Volcano here. I would love it.
But you take it around.
It's going to finally go on. It's finally going on tour next spring. So that's what I was supposed to be doing this year. Because otherwise, my pandemic was fine and we kept busy and there was lots to do.
Vancouver we'll see it then.
It has already gone up twice in Vancouver. So now it's time for it to go on the road. So I think we're looking at Canada and then hopefully some other places after that. We'll see. Everyone's still coming back to life, so we don't really know
where it's going to go,
where it's going to go,
happen.
and who's. There's this funny thing now, right, where everybody's ready to tour. Everybody, everybody's ready. So it may, but I have patience on my side.
So, how do you see the future of the planet?
Oh God. I mean, I'm a relentless Pollyanna. I'm an optimist. There's a show I've been working on called Is My Microphone On by Jordan Tannehill that went up in Germany just last month. And it's a show based on Greta Thunberg's speeches, and it's performed by teenagers. And it's essentially a call to action to the older people of the world, saying we have to do it right now, which is so true. But in working on that show and hearing teenagers talk about the planet, I have so much hope and faith in their abilities. And teenagers will very soon be young scientists. So I like to believe that we're going to figure some things out. I do still think we need to do a lot to change our lives. And I also think that capitalism is the root of the problem. And I don't have the easy solution for that. But I think we got to become less attached to things, because it's really not as great as things make us think they are. So that's where I'm at. But I do think there's hope, and I think we just have to work and try to find our way through this.
What does your husband do now? Is he still a musician? And talk a bit about your.
Oh well, my husband works at the library. He works at the Carnegie Library in the downtown east side.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he loves it there. He is still a carpenter, and I say he's still a drummer, but he hasn't been in a band for a little while. But we're hoping
attachments to community and politics.
Exactly, it's all still there. Anders, my son, plays bass, so I think we're going to try to do a little family band trio for later this summer. We'll see what happens. But I always loved. Patti Smith has toured with her husband and son as her band, and every once in a while
Patti
I think
Smith, that's the past.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, she's still around. She's present.
Cool.
Yeah, she's amazing. And I feel like the world is interested in the older women artists, of which I'm proud to be a part of. So I hope that continues to be true, because it's such a great time for music in so many ways, like it always will be, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Patrice. What a nice.
Really, thank you so much.
You're welcome.